What democratic socialism is about is saying that it is immoral and wrong that the top 1/10 of 1% in this country own almost 90%, own almost as much wealth as the bottom 90%. We need to strengthen and expand instant background checks, do away with this gun show loophole. The planet that we're going to be leaving our kids and our grandchildren may well not be habitable. That is a major crisis. Senator, what we need to do is create millions of jobs by rebuilding our crumbling infrastructure, raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. The only way we really transform America and do the things that the middle class and working class desperately need is through a political revolution.
Those are just some of the redistribution comments made by the 2016 Democratic presidential candidates. In this case, the self-proclaimed socialist Senator Bernie Sanders earlier tonight. Here with reaction, this is a first, DNC Communications Director Louis Miranda. Why don't you come on the show more often? We'd like to invite you on and have a nice, engaging debate. All right, a lot came up tonight about who pays what. A lot of attacks against corporate America, Wall Street, the top 1%. I have a question for you. Do you know how much the top 1% pays in federal income taxes? What percentage they pay?
Well, I'll tell you what, I don't think that it was a tax so much as simply looking at how do we keep America moving forward in a way
I asked you a question.
That's
not my
create
question.
A broad safety net.
What percentage of federal income taxes do that 1% you guys kept talking about pay in federal income tax? Do you know? Do you know?
All our candidates are talking about is creating a safety net and having an economy that works. And if you look at the last 7 years, Barack Obama has actually been pretty good for Wall Street and has actually created an economy that is helping that top 1% as much as anybody else.
Sir, we have about 15 million more Americans on food stamps, about 15 million more Americans in poverty. We have the lowest labor participation rate. Median family income's down $5,000, and he will accumulate more debt than every other president before him combined. Are you saying that's a good record?
You started out saying that you'd like to have me on more often, and I agree because, you know, your audience needs to hear from us and needs to hear different perspectives. And one of the things that I think they need to hear is that there were 750,000 jobs a month
questions, why don't you just give a monologue? I asked you a question.
I'm not giving a monologue. I'm explaining to you that there's a serious record.
I asked the question.
67 straight months of job growth.
We have 15 million more Americans in poverty, 15 million more Americans on food stamps, $5,000 a reduction in median income. Health care costs will go up 40% on average this year. Add to that, he will accumulate more debt than every other president before him combined. Are you making the case that that is a good economic record, sir?
I think you're being selective in the statistics that you're pulling up, because if you look at the deficits under the past two Republican administrations and the past two Democrats, you've seen that Democrats have actually been better in terms of balancing budgets. Democrats have been better in terms of putting the economy on a good track.
Barack Obama said that George Bush borrowing money from the Bank of China in the name of our kids, that's $9 trillion in debt. That's irresponsible. That's unpatriotic.
Sean, do you agree, Sean, that there were 8 million jobs lost in the Bush recession?
He's now accumulated more debt than every other president elected before him combined. Is he irresponsible and unpatriotic, sir?
This is debt that he's inherited, and he's actually done a good job of bringing that down.
And where did he inherit it if it happened on his watch? How did he inherit it?
If you look at the actual statistics, when you go back and look at the facts, you see that Democratic presidents have actually been better for the economy, better for Wall Street, better for deficit reduction than Republicans. And let's face it, George W. Bush exploded the budget and the deficit.
Talking about George Bush. George Bush's big things,
George's
worst year,
including the war in Iraq.
George Bush's worst year was $450 billion.
And so when you have to remind the American people what happened under the last administration that led us to a place where you needed to have Barack Obama come in and implement the type of policies that give us 67 straight months of job growth, 13 million people who have jobs now after 8 million jobs lost in the last one.
Let me
That's a significant record.
I'll say it again. He will accumulate when he leaves office more debt than every other president before him combined. And he said $9 trillion in debt was irresponsible and unpatriotic. And you want to blame George Bush for the debt Obama accumulated. He's been president 7 years. It should be. The buck should stop with him.
Any one of your viewers who thinks back to what things were like when foreclosures were running rampant, Wall Street was running amok,
and think back when
safety nets was disappearing,
more people were
middle-class
working
families were devastated, and what happened that we came in and have a record of real results.
Right.
And when you remind folks of that, I think it's important because they recognize that difference between what they lived 7 years ago and what they have now.
One last question.
And it's important to draw that contrast.
The simple last question. I pay as a New York resident between federal, state, sales, property taxes, 62 cents of every dollar I make goes to government. Am I paying my fair share?
I think what we have to do is make sure that we have candidates who are looking at the big picture of our economy.
Do I pay my fair share? That's a question.
I don't know the details of your finances.
I just told
and I don't
you,
want to get into your
62 cents of every
finances.
dollar, 40% federal tax, 10% state tax, property tax is the second highest property tax county in the country. On top of that, sales tax, hidden tax, it's about 62 cents of every dollar. Do you think I'm paying my fair share?
I think what we have to make sure is that if you're paying your fair share, that's actually going into building up an infrastructure and a system that works for everybody.
Are you capable of answering any question? I want to have you back on, but if you want to answer a question, it's hard to have a discussion with you. You answer your own questions.
Look,
I ask you a question and you ask another question.
I understand your frustration.
But
my frustration is in not giving us a chance to lay out what the record really is. 13 million people have jobs who didn't have them before.
He accumulated more debt than every other president before him combined.
Millions of people who didn't have access to health insurance now have it. That's not true, Sean, and you know it. I'm happy to send you the information on it. Next time I'll come on with some charts if you'd like.
You're not part of reality here.
Happy to debate it with you. But the reality is that Barack Obama and Democratic leadership has actually been good for the economy, and that's what we saw tonight was a field of candidates that's going to do that, as opposed to going back to the type of policies that led to Wall Street crumbling, economic crisis, foreclosures. That's what the reality that people were living was, and I wanted your audience to hear that. I appreciate the chance to come on and talk about it.
The lowest labor participation rate since the 70s, more Americans on food stamps and in poverty, median income is down, doubling of the debt. Yeah, I want them to know the truth. I told them the truth. Thank you for being with us.